And that's recording.
Sweet.
Okay, well, I guess good afternoon and or morning or evening, depending on where you're joining from.
I believe this is good day.
Good day, yeah, that would, unless it's good night. Yeah. Okay, so welcome everyone. Looks like we've got another global edition happening based on where we've got a few people joining from. So my name's Mike O'Shea, and we've got Ben, and we've got Steve, and we've got a whole host of other people. And I haven't actually verified with Richard that he's actually okay to do his bit on WBD today, but we'll assume that even if he's not quite ready for it, we can have a bit of a conversation on it anyway.
I haven't got anything ready. I'm hoping the guy, my guru, is going to turn up as well on this.
Okay.
He hasn't arrived yet. Trying to ping him to get him on.
Okay, even if he doesn't, we can, yeah, just based on the number of people we've got on here, we can probably cover off a few things.
Yeah.
There. Okay. So just quick agenda. One of the things that I've realized that because we've had like quite a, in person, it's a bit of a different thing, but over the last few months, because we've had to hold these online, we're getting a lot of people joining that, aren't necessarily people who'd normally come to an in-person event, even if they are based in Sydney. So I just wanted to make sure that, as we go through that, if there's anyone who does want to jump in and introduce themselves and, just share a bit of information, especially, if there's stuff that you're particularly interested in hearing about, or even if you want to present on something in the future, we're always hoping that people put their hand up, and it's a lot harder than you think to get outside of the core group of people delivering content. So let's just sort of jump in. Do you like my Ben pun in there, Ben? That's not really a pun.
Yeah, I do. I like it a lot. Does that mean that I need to prepare really quickly to do a runbook thing?
Well, isn't that what you put in the message?
Yes.
So maybe the answer to that might be yes.
So
Okay.
all of a sudden, Ben's not going to have video, and he's going to be preparing his demo.
Yeah. Okay. We'll figure something out.
Okay. So we've got dates locked in. So pretty much, even though we know it's the second Wednesday of every month, starting from this month, we still managed to forget until very late. But hopefully it's all in everyone's calendars now. Now, if this does, if we're still in, I don't want to say in lockdown, but if we've still got, we don't have access to normal if we don't have venue access, etc., then I think we can probably just keep to this schedule moving into next year. And if we do get access to Microsoft Reactor facilities again, as soon as I hear from Nadia about when they're thinking about opening up, I'll try to jump in to try to get something booked in on that second Wednesday again before other people start putting their hand up again. So for now though, pretty easy. We've got another 5 months of dates locked in. Now, just a couple of things around what's new. Now, one of the things that's kind of funny here with MD-ATP is we've got the evaluation labs, but you need to have an MD-ATP subscription to use the labs.
Mm-hmm.
So I've sort of been looking at alternate ways of getting MD-ATP set up without actually having to request a trial. And I've been documenting that, but without actually saying that that's the reason why I'm doing that. So there's some updates that are in there. The Linux client, I think that we knew that it was about to hit generally available at the last meeting, but now it is. And we also knew that the Android client was about to hit public preview. So so basically a few things have changed. Now with Intune, is anyone using endpoint analytics yet, or at least have you enabled it?
Not yet, but I'm probably going to at the end of this week.
Yeah. So
how did you find it, Jose? How did you find it? Oh, cool. No mic.
No, sorry. I enable, but I just started looking at the data. It takes a couple of days to come back, so I enable. It was like on Monday or something, or Friday. Like I didn't do any play with the scripts yet. I haven't done much with it.
Okay, nice.
Okay, so then the other thing there is script packages, and I was wondering if you'd had a look at that at all, Ben.
Script packages? No, I have not.
Okay.
That sounds exciting, though.
Yeah.
Is that
It says-
for Windows, or is that for?
Yeah, I think it's the Windows troubleshooting scripts.
Okay.
It's the remediation scripts,
Yeah,
right, Mark?
yeah.
Nice.
Yeah, that's the ones that I haven't looked yet. So you can deploy a script and say that's it, that's what you're looking for, and that's how you remediate in case it happens.
Cool. So potentially this is the config manager solution of baseline remediation. Okay, sweet. I will. I'll get into it. That sounds fun.
Okay. So yeah. So otherwise, I was sort of looking at Azure AD and a few other things. There didn't seem to be anything too major, or at least nothing that sort of really jumped into my world that looked awfully exciting since the last couple of weeks since we met up. But there's, no doubt we'll probably start hearing a bunch more in the lead up to whatever Ignite ends up being delivered as. Yeah, it's kind of weird. Do they hold back all the announcements until a virtual event, or do they just let them come out beforehand? Let's wait and see.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting to see what happens there, to be honest.
Yeah.
I know.
Well, I think they've
intrigued.
Yeah, well, I think you've seen more and more of the teams, kind of pre-releasing the information because they know there's so much going on that week that it's going to get lost if they don't try to at least target their audience ahead of time anyway.
Yeah,
definitely.
Okay. Now, just the final thing before we do hand over to, I guess we'll sort of hand over and sort of have the general WVD conversation first, is just in terms of future topics. What are the things that are on your radar that you really need to know about, things that you've been, that kind of fall into the category of the stuff we cover that you need to know about, or that you would like to present on? So you could either unmute yourself and sort of just jump in and chat, or alternatively, just drop into the chat window and just type in things there. And if you do want to put your hand up to talk about something in the future, please feel free to do that. Don't worry about being nervous, or don't worry about if you haven't delivered any online presentations before. We can make sure that you're set up in advance for that. So I'll just sort of open it up. So what topics would people like to see covered?
Mac OS app packaging and deployment.
Okay.
That's Jose asking that question.
Yeah, I've got a Mac sitting here that I probably need to come up with a justification for. So I will. I'll see if I can come up with something for that.
Yep.
Somebody told me that you've done a lot of work on that before, Steve. So you might be able to cook something up for us.
I've done some stuff with it. Yes. The other thing that I would, what I'd ask you is, did you want to see something around scripts running on Mac OS as well?
Yeah, that would be interesting as well, I think. Yes, if we could do I don't know what other people think of their managing Macs, but more and more, the idea is to just drop Jamf and start using Intune altogether just for everything. And I think that there's still some stuff lacking, but the more and more they introduce the technology, will be good to get up to speed, because there's a few stuff that I really don't know about, and you probably have a more experience than us. So
cool. We can add that onto the list.
Okay. Yep. So I'm just dropping notes into the presentation, so that's easy. Yep.
So we have Mac. Is there anything else from anybody?
I think Azure AD Identity, some of the stuff that's happening around that's pretty cool and foundational. It's not only what we do, but a lot of things.
That sounds like you're putting your hand up to talk about Azure Identity stuff.
Yep, I can do that.
Awesome.
I just got to get myself another free trial subscription, so put it together.
What do you need a subscription to?
Azure AD.
Sorry?
Azure AD.
I'll chat you offline.
Yeah, cool.
Yeah. It's very easy to keep non-stop trials going without too much effort.
Okay.
But not necessarily in the same tenant. But even in the same tenant, you can kind of drag it out for quite a while.
Yeah.
There are lots of little tricks you can use.
Cool. I look forward to that.
Actually, yeah, I could do a session on dirty little secrets of how to keep things going that probably shouldn't keep working.
We might not get invited to the reactor when it opens back up.
Yeah, and we would not record that session either.
Yeah.
I'm just putting together my lab again, and suddenly got some free time on my hands, and like I guess going over what people's lab setups are.
Yeah.
Could be pretty cool, seeing what.
Actually, yeah. Oops, we've got some background
Somebody's
noise.
got some background noise. I think it's Jerome.
Now, this is the fun bit where everyone jumps in to mute that person, but if you hit it a fraction too late, you actually unmute them. So again, let me repeat my my number one Teams request: a mute all button.
That would be nice.
That doesn't accidentally get unmuted, but that wouldn't actually work as well for this because we want people to unmute. Okay, so I'll drop in licensing, labs, hints, and tips. So that's basically, that is kind of my life at times. So especially, yeah, little loopholes that you can use that, yeah, can keep things going for a while. So yeah, we can definitely put some stuff together around that. And I'll sort of throw a few. But
also, like, bring in what people are running their labs on, what hardware people are running it on, any good deals, or secondhand shops and stuff like that. They hit.
Cool.
Okay, so just jump back to the chat window now.
Yes, Charles, definitely there is the Microsoft licensing expert being a valuable job, and you've always got a career advancement there.
Oh yeah.
Job guarantee.
Yeah, and if it is something where we need to cover off licensing, and if we sort of planned it with enough time, we'd probably be able to get Phil in to cover some of that stuff, and at least he'd sort of know who to reach out to for some of the weird scenarios that I'm sure everyone on the call has come up against.
I'm sure we'd be able to also get Ash as well. Mark.
Yep.
He'd do a good job of explaining a lot of those things. So Dean, you're asking around the Teams add-ins. In what context?
Well, just anything that's interesting.
Like bots and things like that.
Yeah, I think there's a lot of interesting Teams bits that help with productivity that we don't necessarily know about.
Yeah, definitely. And this is something that it might be worth giving Jan.
Craig.
I was going to say,
well.
Craig or Jan Cattell on and talk about what they're doing with Teams and Intune for reporting.
Yeah, other things maybe DLP in Office 365.
Yep.
Seems to be a never-ending story.
Yeah. I guess just the whole compliance story is probably, like, how many of you would, just sort of show of hands, how many of you would say that you're probably more comfortable saying that you know a bit about M365 security, but if someone said, what about the compliance side? How many of you would lean towards the security side? Just sort of either drop a comment in or raise your hand. Yeah, this is no real surprise that it's more the security side. So I guess I'll just put in DLP compliance in general, especially now that you've got things like insider risk, etc. Options available. I'll drop that in.
Yeah, data classification's a hot topic in clients.
Yep. Oh yeah.
Yeah, it's a huge topic of moving to the new AIP agent.
Yeah, moving over to unified labeling.
Unified labeling and things. It seems a little bit fragmented at the moment and very difficult to understand what's what.
Yeah, as soon as I think I've got the new stuff under control, I realize that I don't.
Yeah.
As soon as I test something in my lab and it works, and then I roll it out for the customer, it doesn't.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We've all been there before.
Okay, anything else before we switch gears? And now before we do, so was someone about to jump in? Okay, maybe not. Okay, now before we do switch over to sort of get into conversations around WVD and Ben and his run books. I guess just if there's anyone who hasn't joined before, or someone who just sort of wants to introduce themselves, don't feel like you're compelled to jump in. I know that some people do prefer to sit in the background and just sort of soak up what's happening. But we just want to make sure that if you are new to it, that we're not, because quite a few of us do know each other, in some cases pretty well. We don't want that to alienate people who are sort of jumping in for the first time. So if you do want to sort of introduce yourself, please feel free to do so. Even if you're just doing it through the chat window, if you don't want to unmute and talk, that's fine. Okay, and I'll drop in Robert's comment around the MSP management as well. Yeah. But I guess the positive now, though, is that when you do say MSP to Microsoft employees, there are actually some who know what you mean by it.
Yeah, which is nice.
And I'm not actually saying that as a joke. Like going back to maybe 2013 or maybe late 2012, at one of the partner advisory councils, when there was a partner who was an MSP asking a question about MSP support, everyone on the Intune team who was there said, "What's MSP stand for?"
It's crazy.
But it's because they're all focused on enterprise. They weren't. MSP, just wasn't their space. And I've got an idea of who I can tap on the shoulder for some of that stuff. So who might have some updates that they can share. So, okay. So in that case, if we're not getting anyone putting their hand up, does Ben want to run book, or do we want to kick off with the WVD?
Let's start with the WVD stuff.
Okay.
And talk through that discussion point.
Okay. So I'll step back, and who wants to jump in and take the lead on that? Steve. Richard.
I think Richard would be closer to the conversation around WVD than myself, since I still haven't turned on a WVD device.
So how many people here have actually fired up WVD? Anyone at all? Or?
Not me, but I'm very, very interested in it.
We have Rob, we have Dean, we have Aliski. I'm apologizing now if I butcher people's names.
I was really hoping a colleague of mine, Martin, is down your way, Ben. He's done some good work, client down there. What got really, really good positive response from the people that are using it. Found it highly responsive. How many people have been on a Citrix environment that has been, how to put it, less than favorably received by people?
Not well maintained, I believe, is the terminology we use there, right?
Yeah, they always start well.
Yes.
What's the best of intentions?
They start well, they then get used and then heavily used, and then they don't invest in the necessary infrastructure and basically overload, don't necessarily patch well enough. They don't look at the real reasons why things aren't working there, such as the connectivity, the underlying storage, etc. One of the advantages I think with WVD is that scalability of it. The monitoring you can do can really, you're not restricted by your infrastructure like you were before. Like it can scale up hugely overnight as long as you've got enough machines left on your subscription. I can't remember what the limit is on that. That was certainly one of the issues. Quickly go begging to Microsoft, can we have some more machines, please?
Sure.
They're normally pretty good about it, but yes, that can be a fun adventure when you hit that limit on your Azure subscriptions.
Yeah, you're right. They're good. I mean, it was turned around within a matter of, I think, hours it was, which compared to buying a whole new SAN and VMware infrastructure to host extra VMware, Citrix hosts, that's much quicker.
Wait, you're not hosting on Zen server? Hey, at least somebody got the joke.
Oh gosh. Nobody else got on that.
No.
I'm trying to be zen about that joke.
Oh, no, we've got a few people that have put their hand up for that, I hope. Cool. So, yeah, did you want to explain what WVD is, Richard, and conceptually why people would be looking to use it?
So I guess one of the comparisons can draw with WVD is as a direct, I guess, comparison across to AWS with their workspaces. AWS workspace is very much a persistent one user machine relationship type. WVD, you can do multi-user Windows 10 there, and the only place you can do that is on Azure. So that brings in to your non-persistent type setup. So the advantage is there, you can get a much better density of users on and better cost going compared to some of the others. You can also do virtual application delivery, and you can do persistent desktops if you want. So if you've got developers, people who have a more flexible demands, I guess, on your infrastructure and what they want to do, you can definitely give them a persistent desktop. Mm-hmm. It's typically what we're seeing running 4 people on a virtual machine for a standard Office administrative type user. Those they're giving, I think it was 16 gigs of RAM. I can't remember the number of cores they're assigning per machine.
I have a quick question here from Michael. Yeah. So how does the cost compare versus an Azure RDS host or server for WVD? Because I mean, that's going to be the main question that everyone's going to have is how much does this thing cost, right? So is there any like apples orange comparison that we can use?
Oh, you've got to assess it on the use case basis, what you're speccing it up with, how much the machines are in use throughout the day.
Sure. So, I mean, yeah. The answer is it's relative.
Yeah. And
I believe the terminology is, as a consultant, it depends.
As a consultant, it costs me nothing.
Depends, and I've got to rebuild a whole. I've recently changed employer, so I've lost my IP there. We had some spreadsheets, etc., to bring together some of the costs.
Yeah.
But I think that's something, definitely worth anyone who wants to look at this again. If there's a way of, I guess, predicting the usage patterns and then coming up with a cost pattern. There's also functions you can use to accelerate the deployment of machines in the morning.
That's cool.
So at a particular time, launch a number of machines so they're ready. So
basically pre-warming environments, yeah?
That's right, exactly.
Yeah, cool.
And
how's the sorry, I've got a million questions around this stuff. How quickly I assume scale sets are exactly the same as like web apps and things like that. You can set limits if you're about to hit 80% of max load, it'll just kick out 20 new machines, sort of thing like that.
Exactly that.
Yeah, cool.
So it'll scale up automatically. And then obviously you want to have a certain level of scale down as well.
Of course, yeah.
Machines become free up costs.
Yeah.
Yep.
It's good that they're keeping the same language as like applications in Azure as well, so that if you're sort of well versed in one, it means that this shouldn't have such a high learning curve. And that's just an overarching concept that Microsoft's really pushing in Azure, that everything should really be the same as much as configuration goes.
There's that. I think there's some stuff. There's also a lot of stuff in progress as well there around the base image creation, and also there's some changes that have happened recently around image assignment.
Yep.
So previously that was very script heavy.
Sure.
Which is good. There's nothing wrong with that.
Mm-hmm.
But when it comes to handing over to ops, you want to have either something that's automated fully, or I guess something that will help them along the way. So a number of people bringing in Nerdio. I don't know if everyone's heard of Nerdio at all.
No.
So they're selling a number of Azure Automation products. They've got some stuff around WVD to simplify the management of that. And
Nice.
so I guess when you get to a certain scale, you're kind of looking, do I bring in our old friend Citrix, who do have a very strong level of optimization automation capability, or there's some other niche players like Nerdio, like seen Azure WVD and gone, we're going to target this and come in at a very compelling price as well. So you've got to look at the skill set of the operations teams you're going to be handing over to.
So one of the things that I've heard about it is that you can hook it up to Azure DevOps and do all the build pipelines and all of that. Yes, I just got Ben's attention by saying build pipelines.
Sorry, I'm working on my own build pipeline right now.
Have you guys played around much with that yet?
Not yet, no, not on the WVD side of things. They're taking the different templates of everything built, but they hadn't fully automated it into a DevOps pipeline yet.
Mm-hmm.
But that really is a compelling way of doing things, especially for advanced and larger shops.
We should talk offline about that.
Yeah.
Yes.
So just for the audience, why we would be looking at build pipelines and things like that is you can have that consistent imaging with version control and source control attached to it. So your farm becomes basically infrastructure as code consistently, and every time you want to make a change, somebody needs to commit code to your environment and it gets deployed out. It's probably a good way to explain it, right?
Because you really don't want to fall back in the old bad habit of updating your Citrix farm once every 6 months or a year.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. And what it means is you end up with that evergreen experience of always having those new the applications and VMs always being the latest. So, Richard, just out of interest, is there how would we manage a device sitting up in WVD today? Can we do that with Intune, Config Manager, any of that sort of stuff?
The best way is, I guess, Intune, not yet. I think that really the best way is CI/CD pipelines or scripting.
Yeah.
Automating through that, do that reliably. Yes, you could create images and replace them with SCCM or MDT, but that's taking old tools for on-premise, I guess, ways of doing things versus how you optimally do things in the cloud.
Yeah.
Nice.
So, yeah, really want to look at full CI/CD automation that way.
Definitely.
Applications and management of that, it's still in the early days. I think the app attach, is that gone live yet? I think MSIX app attach is either about to go live or has just gone live.
Nice.
So if you looking at MSIX, there's a use case there with this. And I think some of the other vendors are going to start looking at how they do the layering as well.
Yep.
And of course, what do you call it? It's the profile management product built in there. That's got app masking in there as well.
Enterprise roaming.
It's got enterprise roaming. It's got your profile roaming and its capabilities around.
FX Logic.
That's it. Sorry, I just lost my thoughts there. So
I'm
FS.
trying to figure it out myself.
So FS Logics helps resolve a classic challenge with non-persistent desktops and Office 365. So what you do about your OneDrive cache, your Outlook cache, so that resolves that by storing that off on local storage within the cloud there.
Cool.
Yep. So
and that comes free with Azure now.
Yeah, it's part of your AAD license, isn't it? Or is it your EMS license? I can never would remember where FX Logic comes in, or FS Logic, I should say, but yeah.
Yeah. So it's basically UEV on steroids.
Yes, in a big way.
Yeah.
So this is something that Microsoft acquired 18 months ago, I think. And it's all around performance for remote desktop services.
Right.
So, Richard, you mentioned about MSIX and App Attach. There you go, Michael's saying FS Logic is part of the RDS Cal.
Okay.
So, Richard, you were talking about the MSIX App Attach. What's that? Like, conceptually, how does that work?
I haven't seen it yet, but I'm hoping it is more a dynamic way of assigning apps. At the moment, all the apps, unless using third-party tooling, all the apps are put in the base, and then you will hide based using FS Logics based on the what the user is entitled to, which is clunky to say the least. If you've got a lot of applications, and if you like when you're scaling up, that makes things very challenging. So you may have different groups depending on what your target audience are. So the MSIX, the App Attach, will help with that. It's more like AppV in the old Citrix world is the best, I guess, comparative way of looking at this.
Have you so the very real scenario that I've got that potentially is going to happen in the next couple of months is for a client that has an application that does not play nicely with shared workspaces or just on sort of a shared environment with a shared user. Have you done much work with persistent WVDs?
No, not on WVDs. They're all non-persistent.
Yeah, right. It is a thing you can do. I'm just like, I don't really see the value in it because I'm assuming it's going to be a significant expense there to have persistent devices, right?
It is more expensive, but they solve a particular use cases.
Yeah.
Like your developers, people have rapidly changing apps. They want to control what they're installing on there.
Sure.
Yeah, there are going to be some old crappy apps, but sometimes it's maybe looking at what's the element that you want to separate out and how you can isolate that.
Sure.
Maybe using something like MSIX if that can do that.
Yeah. Okay.
So there are tactics that packages can use.
Yeah.
I'm not a packager. It's the same old paradigm as Citrix.
Yeah.
I do packaging, but I'm not advanced in that particular stage. I don't know anyone else who's a packager on the call. Got ways I'd suggest?
Not ways to make legacy applications work nicely. So there's obviously ways that you can shoehorn applications into working in user scope instead of system scope, but unfortunately, there are those rare eggs that just exist that do not like to play nicely at all. And I think I don't know, I do not want to derail this and start talking about application packaging, but there's one of those scenarios where just like sometimes you run into applications that you just can't work with, and the thing that no one will talk about is that happens more than the marketing arm of anyone would like to talk about. So this push to modern everything and WVD and like, oh, we can just do everything, get all of your workloads from Microsoft Store. Fantastic. most companies' core applications, especially if they're in-house, are a nightmare. So that's just it is one thing that everyone needs to think about if they're going to move down this path, is what's the current app stack look like, and can we push it to a modern space, or like what are the pain points we're going to have?
Yeah, I mean there is one product out there that can help, but it comes with a price, which is CloudHouse.
Right.
There's actually a guy down your way, Malcolm McCaffrey. I don't know if you know him at all. Works for there. He's a bit of a genius in that he'll reverse code, write patches in hex, and push it out there.
Nice.
By this point, the vendor and the client's arguing over whether it's a bug or not, and he goes, "I've produced a patch for it."
It was a bug.
And then the vendor goes, "We can't support that," and he goes, "Well, produce your own."
Yeah, it's fine.
Yeah, you figure out how to support it and release your own patch, because it is possible to fix it.
Yeah.
Here's the demonstration.
Right.
Yeah. So probably just a quick one, or a quick poll around the people on the call. Is anybody using MSIX yet, or have used it yet? That's just more out of personal curiosity. Obviously, feel free to raise your hands or comments in the chat.
This is one of those things that last year I very naively suggested perhaps MSIX was dead, to only be very, very quickly reprimanded by a Microsoft dev being like, no, it's being used by everyone. I'm like, all right, well, I haven't used it.
What surprised me was when AppV and MBAM at the same time sort of came back from the dead. And that's made me question what the future of MSIX is. So
yeah, that was an interesting one.
Yeah. And there's also changes in the Microsoft store coming up as well, aren't there? That rumored.
Probably.
I don't know.
There's always changes.
Yes. to use the terminology, changes in the Microsoft store, yes, there's more than likely changes. What
Change
those changes
is
are
inevitable.
And one of the big benefits of MSIX was that you're supposed to be able to load it up in the Microsoft store for business, and then launch that on the machine. So when we see, I guess there's a consistent, sustainable strategy in that space, I think MSIX will get some traction.
Cool.
I know Office 365 is moving slowly to MSIX.
Excellent.
Which is pretty awesome. Yeah. That was a
It makes
conversation
sense.
I had a few years, or 12 months ago.
And Teams?
Teams
I'm
is
not going to
different.
hear that conversation.
No, I can kind of answer that one for you. So Office moving to MSIX is primarily because they're leveraging their UEV framework, so that they can everything in the Office stack can just be its own little sandbox. So that what you're working on, it doesn't matter what your computer is doing. It just exists in its own little space. Teams, on the other hand, runs on the Electron framework, which is JavaScript, which is its own sandbox. So it doesn't matter what it's running on. So it's already doing what UEV and what MSIX wants to do. It's just not beholden to the legacy framework to even need to use that stuff. Is the short and sweet of it. It's better than MSIX. It's better than UEV. It just works because it's awesome.
And we're going to use all your memory.
Yeah, no, well, that's fine. You use all the memory for the sandboxing. That's fine.
And then randomly prompt for firewall rules.
Yeah, I see. I must be the only person that's never actually seen those problems with firewall prompts. I've just never seen them.
I know why, because you've always put it so you don't. You don't trust the network. No, you trust the network you're connecting to. So,
because I'm a zero trust.
You know how it comes up on the right-hand side saying yes, no to the network when you join it?
Yeah.
If you say yes to allow devices to be able to see it, it puts it into the private firewall rules instead of the public firewall rules. The public firewall rules are the ones that are that people get popped up for Teams.
Gotcha.
Just for reference for everybody on the call. So
keep going.
It all comes down to how you've selected that firewall, that setting on the right-hand side.
Gotcha.
If it gets ignored, it goes automatically to public. So therefore, it will go and allow it out. It will get it'll throw the prompt.
Yeah,
so
right.
what you can do to get around that is you can deploy a rule via Intune that will create that public firewall rule.
I think the other key thing with Teams, also WVD now supports Teams for audio video.
That's impressive.
Yeah. So that was a challenge before and has always been a challenge on virtual environments. I'm not sure what extra optimization you've got to put in place to do that. But yeah, if anyone who's tried doing Teams or any AV product in any kind of virtual desktop environment, seen the results.
AV,
you know what I'm talking about.
in RDS environments. Wow. So we've got a couple of messages in the chat from when we were talking through the conversation. So Jose, I believe the question you're asking is FS Logics going to be available for Intune? Correct me if I'm wrong there with that question.
No, you're correct.
To my knowledge, I wouldn't think so, because FS Logic is very much geared towards that RDS environment and session host sharing.
Because
So,
the enterprise roaming profile only works on UWP apps, so it's not made for Win32 apps. So there isn't like a built-in or Microsoft solution that we can save the configuration of those apps apart from UEV, which requires enterprise, and enabling via Intune is not the best way. So I was just thinking if they would have like some kind of solution for the Win32 apps.
Yeah, I'm not aware of any of that sort of stuff happening. I think UEV is actually being deprecated. Just checking the link at the moment.
I wouldn't say that out loud. I've been burnt by that before.
I haven't seen that one, but
well, because UEV originally was part of the Microsoft Desktop optimization pack that you got with Enterprise.
Yeah, sure.
And that whole MDOT model is being removed.
Mm-hmm.
And that's why there was the whole conversation around MBAM and AppV.
Yeah.
So here's a link that I just found where it's publicly being asked and everything around that. It's still fully supported, but they're not doing any active development on it.
Right.
Yeah, actually, I've seen someone doing I never tested, but I've seen someone doing the work of enabling via UEV via Intune and saving the app configuration to OneDrive, but I actually never tested that. So.
Yeah. So UEV technically works, but my understanding is that it's not being developed per that.
Wasn't the point that enterprise state roaming was supposed to take over? Did you just say that out loud and I just missed it?
Enterprise state roaming is a subset of UEV. It's not the whole thing.
Right. But it's like that's your roaming settings and stuff like that, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I believe you can now put policies in for enterprise state roaming, but I've personally not done it. I've only heard this anecdotally. Don't quote me, please.
all the tests that I've done, sorry again to just jump in.
Go for it, dude.
No, that's what you're here for.
All the work that I've done with enterprise roaming is just for Teams and Teams configurations, passwords and stuff like that on the user side, the customizations on the user side, not on apps. And I know it also there's like according to documentation, I think it does for Office 365 and some other bits of Microsoft, but like it doesn't do for any other Win32 apps. And that's a big problem because when you redeploy an Intune, I think that's the only bit that misses. You have the files via OneDrive, you have the apps being installed, you just don't have the apps config. If a user done customizations and stuff, once they need to rebuild the device, they're gonna lose that, and that's one of the bits that is missing at the moment.
So asking, can you use WVD with thin clients? So Yep, definitely. iGel coming big time to the party with that. So they got a number of products that work with that.
Awesome. I'd assume that's the main use case for it, right?
So different use cases. Yeah, if you've got an organization that's wanting, that thin client replace the PC, then definitely. The COVID work from home has been the big driver I've seen.
Yeah, right.
As I was saying, what's your company's digital transformation driver? COVID-19 is listed as one of the options rather. So
it's a big
developers
drive for a lot of orgs.
Huge, yeah, very much so. Because that Citrix didn't scale basically. They were all on-premise infrastructure. Other use cases: remote support staff overseas, especially maybe contact centers, things like that. So your classic call centers in the Philippines, India, they'll use them, and you can put in some really good DLP, basically no copy and paste, no file access, etc. So you can cover off a number of those compliance things. Same goes for remote development, so that there's support cases there. I'm not seeing organizations rushing back to thin clients and virtual desktops. I'm seeing much more of a shift to THAT clients and away from desktops, but that's my view, that the clients I've been seeing over the last number of years. I don't know what else other people are seeing, big expansions on thin clients anywhere.
That's what I'm seeing as well. The other thing that I'd also put up there is it's being used to house legacy applications, so they can move their end-user compute to modern, so being Intune managed, AAD joined, everything like that. And then there's one or two legacy apps that have a short runway left, or even a long runway left of their life cycle, but they won't work for whatever reason on an Intune joined or an AAD joined device. It gets thrown up into WVD.
And then suddenly you can do charge back to the business.
Yep. Then you can start having that conversation of going, well, this application, it's costing us this much per month to run. You either need to work out how you're going to budget to get rid of it, or you need to be coughing up X dollars per month to run this application. And obviously you've put it on the most expensive tier and you've set it so it's highly available and all of the important things, because it is a critical application.
You need to make sure that the start menu pops really nicely and smoothly. That makes sense.
That's right. Yeah.
Yeah.
You don't want to lose experience by putting it up there.
The amount of time I spent on start menus, it's incredible.
So have I. Ask Color about start menu customization.
I think we could do a whole session here on it.
Oh, yeah, it's a nightmare. We could do a whole session on it and why we shouldn't be doing start menu customization. I think that'd be a good one.
Yeah, definitely. I
think so too. I think that's probably a big, very, very valid point. So, all right, well, we've gone down that whole path of the use cases. What's your experience been using WVD so far, Richard? Has it been good? Is the experience better than what you're expecting via Citrix or previous experiences?
It's as good as a very well set up and optimized Citrix environment. And it's as good as a well set up AWS Workspaces environment. So the experience, it's sharp, responsive. The app's working well. Once you've got FS logics tuned, working well, you got your storage right.
The
experience is very good.
So, all right, you mentioned tuning FS logic and storage right.
Yeah.
Let's start in reverse order. What do you mean by storage set up correctly or set up right? What are the important things that everybody should be taking away from that?
Making sure you got the right tier of storage set. Don't use on-premise concepts like DFS. Somebody's trying to be a bit too clever and having data replicating across availability zones. So quite when some of the failures that we're seeing started happening, then that was drawn back. Yeah, I like the shake of the head there.
I think you said it perfectly there, where people are trying to be too clever.
Yeah.
It doesn't matter whether we're talking about WVD or we're talking about someone promising to do an automation session when they're not ready. Try and keep things simple and don't overexert yourself. Like if you can get it to work with the absolute bare basics and then scale out from there, that's going to be the easiest way to win. I'm gonna die on that hill. I think that's yeah.
Just a quick question.
Something for Microsoft as well is get some good FS Logic doco done.
Richard,
sorry. Yeah,
go for it. Question from Jose.
Go for it.
Yeah, just not to lose the topic. How easy is to get there? Like as you said, compared to you've seen some really good Citrix well configured stuff. How easy is to get there on WVD compared to Citrix? Because I know Citrix is a lot of work, and I've just seen a handful of environments of Citrix which are actually really good configured. How easy you'd say it is to get the Microsoft one running?
Well, we had the right team on it. We had it up and running for the client within a week. So COVID lockdown happened. They said go for it. Like no one had done it before, and we had it going in a week.
Wow.
Scaled up. I think that was 20 people at the end of week 1, and I think it was like 50 to 100 on week 2, and it was staged with the applications as they were coming in. So yeah, it's pretty straightforward.
Cool.
Most of it is well documented.
Awesome.
Yeah. So the speed, the rapidity which you can raise stuff and scale it in today's environment is key. That was a real winner with it.
I'd sure like some demos.
That's where we're gonna say, Mark, how can we get some free compute?
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, that's awesome. So around the FS Logic, we've spoken a bit on that. How hard is that to tune and customize for your environment?
That involved a number of Microsoft calls, unfortunately.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
It's just a little bit more finicky or complicated?
A bit finicky, very specific combination of settings that didn't quite match what was in the documentation that was out of the box. Okay. Once that was set, people's Outlook was caching consistently every time. It's the last thing you want to see is someone waiting for their mailbox to synchronize, or completely fail to synchronize, and all the data potential with that.
Nice. Okay, that's good to hear. So basically, what you're saying is, if people haven't looked at WVD, they should jump out and have a look at it. At least have a play around with FS Logic and see what they can work out, because it's pretty much ready for prime time.
Oh, big time. Yeah, definitely. Yeah,
it's past that. It's very much there.
Awesome.
Yeah. It's more around now how the key things to look at, how you're going to operate. Do you really need to lay Citrix on top of it, or Nerdio for the people that'll be operating?
Yeah.
So it's much more down to those optimization challenges, which every virtual desktop technology has.
Yes.
I guess
yes,
just
indeed.
my question for you, is there anything that you thought it would do that like functionality that's just not there?
Not in the use cases we had. I think the application delivery side, how that pans out, that's going to be interesting, especially for app layering and some of the third-party products, how they start integrating. That's going to be really interesting.
Yeah.
Where the price points as well, what scale you need to bring in, like the Citrix or Nerdio into to operate it, but on 200 to 300, we didn't see the need for Citrix, but Nerdio just got over the technical limitations of the operations team.
Okay. So what you're saying is it's well worth upskilling into it because it's going to be a role that's in demand for people to understand that technology, and there is that learning gap.
Definitely, a lot of demand for it out there.
Yeah,
a lot of people are looking at this.
Yeah, I'm hearing that as well. I don't know about Mark and everybody else.
Yeah, I guess the thing that I find, well, it's not really weird. It's just that in terms of where it fits, if you sort of think about it, that it's effectively, okay, there's obviously Azure IaaS underneath it, but a lot of the use cases are for people who are more, let's say, desktop productivity focused. So I think one of the things that I'm seeing people struggle with is there might be people who know maybe the Office side, so they just want a quick way to deploy apps, but they don't really know any infrastructure as a service type pieces around, you're talking about the storage planning, etc. That's probably the biggest challenge I'm seeing with people at the moment is they're sort of being thrown into these very rapid deployment projects where they just don't have the basic Azure skills to make the right decisions.
Yeah.
Yep.
Another thing, I mean, this is with any cloud project, is working out what ports have I got to open up to get my apps working.
Yes.
All of them.
just
all of them.
Star.
Asterisks, yeah.
Star: star. So all IP addresses to all ports, in and out.
Yeah.
Nothing would ever go wrong at that point.
Because again, you're talking legacy apps connecting back to legacy apps and a legacy data center potentially, or if they're migrated to IaaS. So all those usual cloud challenges still apply.
Yeah.
And get your identity right as well, having that right, whether it's for WBD, Intune.
Yeah.
You got to get that right.
So regarding the networking, that's one of the things that I've heard being one of the most complicated parts about getting WBD up and running. Would that be a fair statement?
I guess we had a bunch of networking guns around us.
Yep.
Who've been working around Azure and cloud migrations. So that wasn't an issue for us because we had good quality networking people around. I'd say that is a key thing for any cloud journey anyone's going on. Have good networking people around. It is a challenge for every single cloud type project you'll do.
Definitely. And then Rob's asked a question around single sign-on with thin clients into WVD, and a very
it's a bit clunky.
Yes, that's what I'm hearing as well. So do you know, or have you done much around that sort of thing?
You sign into the portal itself, fire up the the client, and then you'll be prompted again for your actual Active Directory credentials. So I wouldn't say it's a seamless sign-on. You're still using the same creds through. It can be improved.
Okay. So it's a single sign-on, but it's just not seamless single sign-on.
Yeah.
Okay. Interesting. It's awesome. So, bigger question for everybody on the call: did you find this session useful? Everybody's answering very rapidly, I see. So I got 1, 2, yes. Carla, yes. Awesome. I know I did.
I appreciate because I was totally unprepared. So
yeah. And I think that's the most important thing is a big call out to everybody while we're waiting for Ben to come back was we're doing this off the cuff, and as you're seeing, it's questions and everything associated around it. So obviously, feel free to jump in and ask questions, but we will say we don't know, as you heard throughout the whole conversation. But yeah, please get involved and ask the questions while we're going through these sorts of conversations, because it makes it a lot easier for us as well to make sure that we're not just in an echo chamber. It's probably something I'd call out. So yeah, we're just waiting for Ben to come back. He's ducked away. Is there any other questions that anybody wants to ask around WVD or anything on that roadmap for that? Mark, you've got your hand up. Do you have a question? Oh, he went down really quickly.
I was just stretching.
There's a really interesting question I don't have the answer to from Robert around single sign-on on a thin client.
Oh yeah.
That's a really. And do you join thin clients to Azure AD? Oh.
I get the heebie-jeebies when I domain services, whether it's Active Directory, Azure Active Directory, or even a worker. I'll be honest.
I've seen a total overcomplication of doing thin clients, so they became fat clients.
Yeah.
I think we've all seen those. And I think we've all been put into situations where we've had no choice on it.
Mm-hmm.
Words like right filters and antivirus, it's just USB.
Yeah.
And we're going to use Windows Embedded because we just feel like paying an extra $300 because we know how to manage Windows.
I appreciate.
I got my thing working. Yeah.
And Michael's also asking, Richard, how long have you been live running WVD in your customer environments, if you're willing to admit to that?
So they went live mid-April, I think it was. So it wasn't long after the lockdown. And each week they staged on another set of users and applications based on the use cases there. So one of them.
So a couple of months.
Yeah, those
nice
big ones. I think it was a GIS app they had in there, so they had to provide a lot more grunt. Yeah. I think some graphics processing on that one. So that was another very specific area that took quite a bit longer to get going because of the complexity of the application itself, not WVD.
Yeah, nice. Cool. Well, I think that covers it off. So let's put Ben on the spot and see if he's got his demo ready. Drum rolls, please.
I don't, but we can talk about why it's failing, and I can fix it while we're doing it as well.
Okay. Are you going to share your screen or?
No. Give me one sec.
Your resolution's busted, isn't it?
No, I fixed that while people were talking. I'm not going to drop it to 1080p though.
So Ben has a ridiculously wide scaled resolution, which is what's the frame rate?
5120 by 1440. It is a 49-inch super ultra wide screen, and it is awesome. And I love working from home. All right.
But it's worse when he shares his screen and you see it spread across.
Yeah. So my workaround for this, for anyone that's interested, is my laptop has a USB-C out and a HDMI out. So I'm running the USB-C into the monitor and HDMI into the monitor and displaying them as separate screens on the same screen. So I have display 1 and display 2 on the same screen, which is great. Okay. Let's have a look here.
So while you haven't put it down to 1080, Ben, I'm going to ask you to zoom that in a little bit because I can barely read that font, and I'm sure everybody else on the call will somewhat agree with me on that one.
Yeah, you're all cowards. Give me a sec. I'll change the resolution. 1920 by 1080. Okay, so I think I promised a demo on runbooks.
Yes.
But this is less a demo on runbooks and more a demo on how to look after runbooks in Azure Automation. So this just goes back to my constant conversation around source control and treating anything that you do in Azure as code. I've lost count of the times that I've seen runbooks that have been set up by people, well-intentioned people, that they don't know where the runbook came from. They don't have a copy of it stored anywhere, and they make changes to it on the fly. And if it ever breaks, there's no rollback mechanism for that. I've just created one for us because I really love this acronym M365 MMM, which is our user group name. And we go into the runbooks. So for anyone playing at home that hasn't done Azure Automation, this is 99% of a brand new automation account. I've only added one script in here. So by default, you get these three. Most people will go in and they'll just go create a runbook. They'll type in the name. Here's my runbook. Runbook type, we're going to say it's PowerShell. And
well, no, Ben, wouldn't we do it as graphical? Because that's just going to be easier.
Yeah, no. Let's not do that. So we'll build this, and basically what it's doing is it's creating a PowerShell script that's going to sit there and be classified as a runbook. And I mean, it's just a PowerShell script. There's nothing fancy about it. We go in here. We have a VS Code-esque editing pane where we can start typing things in. This was very much designed back when they didn't expect that people really knew a lot about what they were doing. So they've got the command palette, so you can go through and you can try and find any of the commandlets that you want to use, and you can just drop them in. Honestly, you'd just be typing your code, or you'd be copying and pasting it from your secret little stash of scripts. So the problem is, so we'll just do one that's just echo hello world. It's not actually going to do anything. Save that.
So just a quick one. Publish it if you want, Ben, for me.
Yeah.
That's right. So I was going to call you out on that one.
Yeah.
Oh, no, you know more about PowerShell than I do.
A little bit.
Of course, Echo will work.
I mean, it will, yeah.
So how do we add commandlets to that palette on the left-hand side?
Sure. This is actually the reason that the demo is not working. So by default, when you create, an automation account, you get given access to, it's kind of like if you were creating a function app, where you have some basic modules available to you. Unfortunately, it's real clunky because this is kind of, Microsoft's first automation solution, and it's showing its age pretty quickly, but there is a lot of value in it. So okay, all those commandlets that were available, we need to go, so this is back in the so if we start from, I've just gone into my portal, I've gone into automation, I've gone into my automation account, I scroll down to modules, and in here I have all of the modules that are available to me out of the box. At the moment, I've added a couple. So I've added az.accounts, and I haven't added the other one. But you actually end up with a whole bunch of these Azure RM ones, which is a nightmare because the Azure RM modules don't work nicely with the AZ modules. So if you're building anything that is new, that relies on the AZ modules, you actually need to go through and you need to delete these ones, which takes time. And it's slow. But this is, so to answer your question, Steve, this is where those commandlets appear or come from. So this is basically our workspace that we're downloading the modules that will be permanently available to any runbook that we run. But yeah, so if we wanted to delete this, we need to go in here. It's not going to let me delete some of them because these are baked in, but there's sort of ways around that. But let's just go back to that runbook that I created, the really, really amazing one that does a lot. So we can see here's my runbook. It's published. It's a PowerShell runbook. And then from here, we can either view it, we can edit it, or we can start it. If we click start, yeah, we're going to run it. It's not going to do anything. It's just going to, it can take a little while to queue, because what it's doing is it is actually standing up a workspace to run this PowerShell script. So that's sort of why I say it's very similar to a function app. But we'll give it a second.
At least you don't have any errors. That's I'm impressed.
Yeah, this is not too bad. It's not too bad. It's completed. Do we have an output? Probably not. Probably because I just wrote write host and not write output. That's another thing about this. Yeah, it's not the best at. I'm really not selling automation. It's kind of the point of this is not really to be an interactive thing. You have these runbooks to stand up your WVDs. You have these things to automate certain workflows that you have that you know off the back, like the back of your hand, and you know that you can do them without needing the comfort of things being told that it worked. I know that this worked because it said it completed and it didn't error out. It's not given me any output, but you know, that's fine. The reason that I built that was to say, if I go in and I edit this to go write output, because I cooked the first one, and we just go save and publish.
You always have to hit publish there, otherwise it won't work.
Exactly. It puts it in a staging space, which is actually kind of cool. It makes you have to think about what you're doing a little bit more. But okay, so I've gone in and I've modified that. Now, the problem that I see with this is that I don't have any historical proof of what that script was previously, which to me is a really bad idea. So if you've got a contractor or an engineer or anyone who's gone, we found a problem with the automation runbook, we're just going to go in and we're going to make a change. They go in, they do their best efforts, they write the code, they save and they publish, and it doesn't work.
And also because they're a contractor, they haven't put any comments in the code because
of course. So there's a problem here. The code doesn't work, but even worse, we don't have a way to roll it back. So what they've done is they've, instead of adding that one block of code, they've selected it all, they've deleted it, and they've saved and published. You've now lost everything that was in that runbook, and if you weren't smart, you don't have it locally either. So you are in the proverbial, which is not a great place to be. Now, more things about runbooks that I don't like that we can fix. There is native ways to enforce source control in runbooks, but they don't work. So if we go into, where are we? Source control. Seems like that should be the place that you go to do source control, right? Okay, so if we go in here and we go add, this is the same as if you were doing a function app, or you were doing a web app, or you were doing any of those containerized solutions. Even the new one that they announced at Build, what was it? The static web app stuff. This is where you do your source control connector. So we give it a name, source control type. We're going to do Azure repos.
Hey, you can do TFS.
You can do TFS. That's how old this stuff is. They can't take anything out. So it's actually quite cool to go in and just sort of see what they used to have to support and what they still support with this stuff. You have TFS support if you're doing function apps as well. I'd be interested to see if anyone's doing it. Okay, so we're just going in and we're going to authenticate.
If they're doing Dynamics deployments, they probably would be, because it's all based on what's the name?
Yeah.
TFS runbooks.
Oh, for sure, yeah. So what this is doing is it's basically creating a service account that will be the connector between my Azure Automation and my DevOps environment. Not much to it. We're just granting the ability for identity read, work items read, code read, service endpoints read, that sort of stuff. We'll just hit accept. It's fine.
The important thing you'll note there is it's all only read. There is no write back.
That's right.
So for a build pipeline or for a publishing here, that makes sense. because you shouldn't be editing in this UI and then pushing it back across.
Yeah. So I've created a repository previously that doesn't have much in it. It's just got a runbook that I want to get into this environment. We're going to do our branch as master. It should be called main. The folder path where all the runbooks are going to be is just runbooks for me. This is completely up to you. And this is where it gets interesting. So auto sync and publish runbook. So if we say on, and then we say publish runbook, to me, this seems like that should be all we need to do. We hit save, and then the next time that I make a commit to that repository, specifically to that folder in that repository, which is runbooks, it should immediately synchronize the content and then publish that code. The problem is, and to be completely honest, I haven't tried this in a little while, but the sync task does not work. It just bombs out every single time. We can try it. Because there is one in there. We'll just click start sync and see what happens.
I had really good experiences with this.
Did you?
Yeah, I've used this quite a while.
Okay.
And
with the auto sync and all that stuff.
Yeah,
okay.
Definitely.
Let's see what happens.
I've had it at the time. I did it through GitHub. So not Azure repos,
okay.
but it works perfectly. It takes about 2 to 5 minutes before it gets synced up, published, everything.
Yeah.
And it works just fine because I have my main maintenance scripts running through there.
Interesting. So what I want to do, like, even if this does work, which, like, it's really cool that you had it working. I never got it to work for me. Could have been a permission thing. Probably was a permission thing. Good odds, but I made a workaround. So what this is doing is it's sort of running its own runbook of sorts. It's getting the credential details, all the run as information to basically go to the repository that I have and just grab that runbook and then put it into this environment. We'll just give it a second. Cool. So this has worked. I know manually I've always had it working. It's the automated part that was failing for me. Maybe we can add a runbook and we'll just see how it goes.
Yep, so that's completed. You can see that it's ended.
Yeah, cool, completed. And I can see query and start DevOps source control sync is there. Yep. So if we go into runbooks, we should now see Query Defender ATP and start DevOps source control sync. That's awesome. So what happens if I go in and I make a change or I add a runbook to my DevOps environment? What I'm going to do is I'm just going to pop over here and I'm going to pause this pipeline because now I'm actually quite curious to see if I can get this to work. We'll go edit.
So what Ben's going through here at the moment is the Azure DevOps pipeline.
Yeah.
And this is where that's the CI part of CD. So he's sitting there and just having that automated to
actually it's worth showing what I'm doing properly. So I'm going into the pipelines. I have a pipeline that is basically what this does is it triggers that sync for me because I was having a problem with the automatic sync trigger. So what I've got it doing is very similar to that. I've got a trigger waiting on any code that is committed to a specific folder in my repository. So what I'm going to do is instead of changing the code to stop looking at that, I'm just going to overwrite that by going in and just go edit pipeline. So we can see here my trigger is on the master branch and anything within this path, the runbooks path. So instead of changing that code, saving it and waiting for that to run, I'm just going to go in to triggers. I'm going to override the YAML continuous integration trigger and I'm going to disable continuous integration. So basically my
And you'll note that Ben left a very concise comment there explaining exactly why that change was made.
Exactly. It's important. It's very important to leave good code comments. Okay, so let's go. I'll just add actually, if I just change this one, we'll just go right host. This should fail. We'll save that. Okay, updating QDATP runbook. So this is all just done through VS Code. At this point, it shouldn't need to be explained. Just wait for that to kick in. And we'll just pop back over to this. We'll see if that's automatically triggered. So I'm going to go into source control, sync jobs.
Just to refresh. Yeah.
What's the time? 7:01.
Yeah. So that still hasn't picked it up.
So Rob, what was your experience like getting this to automatically kick off? It just worked?
Basically, yeah, it just worked.
Yeah,
I'll see if I can. I don't have the repo on the new machine yet, but I can quickly do it. Maybe I can show it.
Yeah, I'll show you how I get my pipeline to do the thing. It explains quite simply why it's going to fail, and if I had more time, I can get the modules. This is basically missing modules. Is the thing, but it shows you why it failed as well. So it's just interesting that this hasn't kicked off, and this is the experience that I found. It just
so what
doesn't.
You're saying is you just didn't wait long enough.
Probably.
I'm guessing it. It might be a patience thing.
Yeah.
Because I noticed like I said, it's 2 to 5 minutes. I think it polls on an interval. It doesn't like snap immediately, does it?
Yeah, and see, this is the thing that I don't particularly like about that. Even if that is the case, and it works perfectly if I'm patient, I've got a connector set up there to monitor for this location. As soon as a commit comes in, a trigger should be hit that starts this sync, and that's something that I just wasn't noticing happening. Or if it was failing to do the sync for whatever.
So what you're saying is you just need to have on your build pipeline it going and triggering the start sync button.
Yep, and that's exactly what it was doing. So okay, we'll leave this for a little bit, and we'll just see if it works. If it doesn't,
if you want, I'll quickly try and set it up on my account if I can show.
Yes, set your stuff up, and then we'll pop over to that when I'm finished here. All right, so let's go in and have a quick look at what we've got here. So this is the repository in DevOps. We'll just have a quick look at the code that I've got. So I've got some build scripts. I've got some testing stuff that I haven't set up for this. I've got my pipeline code and then my folder runbooks, which has got start DevOps source control sync, which is the bootstrap script that I use to kick off that sync. And then I have the runbook that we want to actually update in the environment, which we can see was updated 3 minutes ago. We can go in, we can go right host this issue file. So that should be there. If we go into our runbook, we have a look here, edit. It's very much not it. Okay, so let's go and we'll kick our pipeline back into gear and we'll have a look at what this is actually doing. So first of all, we'll go into edit.
Well, you can just hit run on that, can't you? And it'll go through and
I can. I just sort of wanted to show what was happening. So we've got the trigger on runbooks as we spoke about previously. I've got a couple of variables that I'm defining. So just the automation account name, which is M365 MMM. Resource group's the same, and the runbook name. So this is the runbook that we want to trigger. And then all we're actually doing is one task in this specific runbook. In other ones that we're using in production, we have testing, all sorts of stuff. But in this one, we actually only have one command, which is an Azure PowerShell command, which is just going to build.ps1 and running a couple of arguments against that. So it's automation account name, resource group, and runbook name. Making sure that we're using the latest version of PowerShell, which is 7 in the Azure Automation stuff. It was actually just announced recently that 7 is now in use for Azure Functions as well, which is very exciting. And if we pop over to the build script, where are we? Files, build. There's not much to this either. So we've got get automation account. So it's just grabbing the auth context using the account name and the resource group. Because we've created that service account, I've got native access to get the run as account. And then I'm just going start AZ automation runbook. The runbook name is being given, which is just that bootstrap runbook. And it's basically doing the thing that I always ran into a problem with, where it wasn't automatically kicking off that sync. So what happens here is that every single time I commit a script in, this runs, and it forces that sync to happen for me. So it's not that I don't think that the source control works, it's that the automatic syncing was failing for me. So this pipeline, which is quite simple, is a way around that, and it's a really easy way to do that. I'm really curious to see if I can get this to work. Let's have a look. Sync job. Ooh, it's queued.
Queued. There you go. And it's
So
incremental.
it only took 10 minutes. So it must run on like a 10-minute interval or something.
Yeah.
Let's have a look. One of the other inherent benefits of doing it, let's go and call it the hard way, or the non-standard way, outside of this, is that as part of publishing any runbooks, you can have code quality checks, or sort of idiot checks, if you will, so that if you've got multiple people working in this environment, you can't just have someone publish code that will fail.
If you're going to use PS Script Analyzer, make sure you turn off the trailing white spaces. It is infuriating, absolutely infuriating to have that turned on.
No, it's good. For those playing at home, all of our Azure Automation accounts have a very specific set of rules, including make sure that you don't have trailing white spaces set up, because I just like to make sure that the code that is being written is good. That's all I'll have to say on that one. Also, none of my scripts fail that thing, because in my VS Code environment, I've got on save, remove trailing white spaces. All right, we'll just give this a sec. Doesn't look like it's
still just processing it.
Yeah, I'm very impatient. Let's just go.
I know.
Yeah. All right, I'm gonna just run this command and just show you. Let's go into pipelines.
It's queued.
Yeah, I know. It's just not doing anything.
Just wait.
I don't know. I don't have the time.
You do have the time.
All the time in the world.
Everybody's going to sit and wait until it's all working then.
Oh, of course.
It's not like you're doing a demo or anything. Welcome to the Ben and Steve show.
It's with Ben. For the rest of my life, it is Steve and with Ben.
That's right. I'm fine with that.
Yeah. Okay. I mean, that's been 2 minutes, right? That's ridiculous that that's cute. And I understand why.
This is basically your problem with Azure Automation. You've been using functions.
Yeah.
You've been used to the fact that it works like right off the bat.
Mm-hmm.
If I'm not mistaken, the load up time for Azure Automation is like minutes compared to seconds. And if you're used to, I started working with the Azure Automation before functions was properly functioned.
Mm-hmm.
So that was fine with me.
Yeah, sure.
And you basically click it, you wait for it, and it does its thing. But if you're now used to functions, everything else is slow.
Yeah.
Because it doesn't compare.
Yeah.
Okay. That's completed.
So it's completed, and I can see that the one file was synced, Query Defender ATP. If we go into runbooks, and we'll just confirm that that code has changed. Query Defender ATP. And we'll just go view we should see this should fail. So, okay, native source control does in theory work. The benefit of me changing it and even doing it this way, if the absolute takeaway from this is that you've seen how quickly I can set up source control natively in Azure Automation, that's a good takeaway. Because now that I've made that change to that code, if I go back into DevOps and I go into files and I go into my runbook that I accidentally deleted everything out of, and we go crew defender OTP and we look at the history, I've now got access to the old code. So if anything, like if there was just any problem, if someone accidentally deleted the wrong thing, we can always go back and recover that code, which is something that you couldn't do if you just natively handled Azure Automation runbooks from the console. The benefit of doing it the other way, so doing it from pipelines, is that you can put in health checks and you can put in code quality checks as well. So you're still, in the native way, you're still relying on the expectation that the person writing the script knows exactly what they're doing and they're perfect 100% of the time.
But
putting it as, yeah, you are. You definitely are. But being able to just subvert or go around the native source control, what we're doing here is not significantly different than the native one. It just allows us a little more control over what we're doing. So an example, I'm pretty sure I've got the runbook hidden over here. Just give me one sec. Rob, how are you going getting your automation stuff up?
Oh yeah, basically it would show what you just showed.
Yeah, sure. So we don't really need to show. That's all good. That's fine. Let's go. There's an engine reporting automation. So as an example, I had this one. So I've got a couple of other stages in. This is a production one as well. So I've got, as well as this Azure PowerShell step, I have these ones. So I'm setting up, did that copy? Yeah, it did. It did. Oh, I see what it did. There we go. Let's just get rid of that one. Copy, paste. So I'm not actually doing a significant amount here. I'm just running a pester test against anything that's in that runbook, and then I'm just publishing the results to that. Now, the pester test can be as complex or as simple as you want, but it's just at the very least going, is it going to do what it's supposed to do, or does the code look okay? Because again, if we're putting it into our Azure Automation environment, that is a production resource, and we're just trusting inherently that the person that's writing that code has done enough testing for it to warrant being published there. And if you have source control set up natively, even if they publish that code into the master repo of that, it's going to show up in the production environment. So it's just worth realizing that there are ways that we can actually do some testing as well as doing source control. Yeah, that was kind of all I had.
Awesome.
I wanted to show you why my pipeline failed and why I figured it out very quickly and then couldn't fix it because we're in the middle of a user group. If I go into my Start DevOps Source Control Sync runbook, which is the one that I'm using to kick off the sync, I can see it's failed every single time. If we go into the last one, and I go into my exceptions, so it failed because I specifically have an error action preference of stop, but it's saying the specified module AZ automation was not loaded because no valid module file. So I can basically go through and I can go, oh, okay, so I just need that. And again, as I showed at the top of this, we go into here, we go into modules, we browse the gallery. I just type this bad boy in. I click import, and then I wait about 5 to 10 minutes. It's quite interesting how long all of this stuff takes. especially now that we have the ability to have referenced or mandatory modules in Azure Functions that will just appear within like minutes. It's interesting to sort of go back and see how time consuming this stuff is. But hey, once it's there, and it never needs to be pulled back down, which is kind of cool.
Yep. Cool. So is there any questions for Ben?
Yes, I have a question. Don't laugh at me.
We're not laughing at you. We're laughing with you.
I'm laughing at myself.
No, I'm really quite curious. Do you have some common tests which you set up for like all your PowerShell CI/CD pipelines?
Yep,
and
100%.
How did you get to those tests? Is it like a group thing? Did you just go about like, oh, this seems interesting to me? Or I'm looking, because I'm working with a team to start using DevOps, and I'm trying to get them to use CI/CD and stuff like that, but it's like really slow, and I'm having to figure everything out for them to work with.
Yeah, sure. So the absolute bog standard pester test that I will do is just running Script Analyzer against the code. With a couple of exceptions, I run every single PS Script Analyzer test against every single bit of code that goes through. The key thing here is that this started happening because we got some resources on that were super happy to assist, but weren't experienced with PowerShell. But they had the skill set that they could write the code, but we just needed an extra pair of hands to just verify that the code was up to our expectations. So the absolute standard thing that we'll do, I'm pretty sure I've got it here, so we can go in and have a look at it, is just to load the latest version of PS Script Analyzer into our hosted environment, and then just step through that. So we'll go into the test. I'll show you what this looks like.
What I'll say is Ben's pester test for PowerShell is pretty straightforward. Don't ask the questions about his JSON checks for his logon scripts and capitalizations. Yeah.
You can get very nerdy. So this is the script that sort of bootstraps into pester. Now this sort of stuff, it's actually quite interesting. This invoking pester using scripts and all this sort of stuff doesn't work in version 5. Very important if you're going to start doing this sort of stuff, or if you have been doing things with pester, you now need to be very, very careful that you import the correct version of pester. Otherwise, all of your tests will fail and your stuff will not continue. And it will take you a little while to understand why that's failing. So just when you're importing pester, you got to make sure you're choosing the correct version. But this isn't too complicated.
Is that
it's just
planned to be fixed? Or is that intentional?
No, this is like version 5 is the way forward. They've basically just said that any of your tests, you don't have to come forward with us, but we're not maintaining 4 anymore. So if you've got pester tests that work, drop a pin, say this is the version you're going to use. It's never going away. Do your pester tests and just be done with it. But if you're now building new tests, use 5 and just do it from there. Basically, is the standard expectation.
Okay, so basically what you're saying is there's no plan to support Dash script in 5 and just start again.
I'm not the best person to talk about that, but yes, anything that doesn't currently work is not meant to work in 5.
Okay.
Yeah. But this is my test. It's not that complicated. So I'm going in here, I'm looking at runbooks, I'm looking for anything that includes .ps1 because that is, inherently a PowerShell runbook. And then I'm just stepping through each one and just doing PowerShell scripting quality checks. I don't have, the only ones that I'm excluding are avoid using write host, avoid using convert to secure string with plain text, because we had a script that needed to be there. But aside from that, every other rule is there. What ends up happening is we have about 80 or 90 quality checks or tests that run against each script. So if you end up with a automation account that has 20 or 30 runbooks, you get a lot of test results, which is really good. And it's very easy to immediately see where it failed. This one's interesting because natively it's quite difficult to actually go in and find where or what failed. So this command pipes out and it says our code should be perfect. However, in this script, this line, we got an error saying this. So we can actually go into the test results and immediately see what the failure was, and then we can go and fix it. Alternatively, that error can be emailed out to people, which, I mean, it does if they're subscribed to the CI/CD pipeline stuff. And they'll get an email saying it failed, and then this message will pop up. So they'll be able to go in and fix that immediately, which is pretty cool. So even just from this, Rob, just doing PS script analyzer stuff against your code is a really good way to just sort of enforce that. Like, if you guys aren't used to this, it's okay. Give it a go. If your code's not up to scratch, it's not going to pass go. And it's not going to get into production. So there's no real inherent risk there, or we're lowering the risk.
What I would say, sorry, go Rob.
No, I was looking at first just keep it really basic and do the minimum, because I had I don't know if you know Bartek. He also made some custom rules for like layouts, and it's like,
yeah.
It makes the threshold a little too high for like people trying to start with it. But this is like the basics.
Yeah, I mean, look,
and that's what I was going to call out is, while this is awesome and it works really well, and I've seen it work really well using the basic PS script analyzer rules, it can also be a deterrent for people who are still learning it and sitting there and going, I don't know, it's broken, and throw their hands up in the air and not want to do checking code. So you need to be available to answer questions if you're going to go down this path, is what I would say. And be patient with them.
Just wanted to see if I could do this. Tests. Code check. Yeah, that should work. This one. So this is doing the pesta test for me locally. And these are all the tests I do against. So the 2 scripts got checked then, but you can see, there's a lot of tests that ran. It tells you exactly how long it took. So it's not a lot of time, but we've got that validation that like we're avoiding any complexity here or any stuff ups in a very simple way of enforcing pesta. I just think it's a sort of a no-brainer. And again, that's the sort of thing you don't get natively with doing source control in Azure Automation, but you can get very easily by doing DevOps.
So Ben, David's asked a question.
Yeah.
Is there any training courses you or anyone could recommend for runbooks and automation in general?
For runbooks and automation?
Or automation?
Yeah, no, I don't know. Mark, would you have any recommendations?
Sorry, I missed the question.
Any recommendations on training for automation or runbooks or sort of any of that stuff?
There's none of the Microsoft stuff really goes into all that much detail. Maybe like that, probably either like AZ400 or the AZ204 would probably be the closest. But I think that the challenge with a lot of the Azure courses now is they've got to cover so much that nothing really gets all that much attention. So it's probably, docs and maybe even going through Microsoft Learn would probably be good starting points.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Otherwise, what I would also suggest, if you're wanting to see and get inspired by other people doing things, go and look up PSConf Europe, Asia, and the PowerShell Summit on YouTube and GitHub, and you'll find some really cool stuff up there.
PowerShell.video will take you straight to all of the PSConf videos. There's the people doing stuff here, myself not included, are doing some really, really cool stuff. You can get some, from absolute basic automation through to more advanced stuff. There's a heap of great content there, and it's criminally underviewed. So I strongly recommend jumping on there and having a look.
I'd agree, Rob. Ben does a fantastic job with some of the stuff he's put up there, and his co-host was fantastic.
No, but I really want to stress this because I was at PSConf Europe last year, and basically Ben's sessions about the automation with Intune and the way of using the build pipeline, basically that was the one session that made me understand build pipelines properly. So it really, really did help. And in that sense, really thankful as well. So don't undercut yourself.
Oh, I love undercutting myself. I'm Australian. But honestly, it took me a very, very long time to understand pipelines myself. Just understanding that, I mean, the easiest way to take the air out of the confusion about it is all you're doing is making someone else's computer that is always set up the same way every single time run some stuff for you. It's your job to tell it what to run. That's kind of all pipelines are. You can get complicated with it, and you can just start doing, approval triggers and gate checks and all that sort of stuff. But like this is actually kicking off that sync command now. I'm just waiting for it to fail to see whether there's another module. But yeah, I mean, pipelines can be as simple as you need. Most of the stuff that we're doing is just a simple idiot check before we push it out to production. And if that's all you use it for, that's kind of the intended purpose. It's very similar to GitHub Actions as well. It's just a way that we can verify the code before we push it to production, which I think is really important. Failed. One more check. I just want to do one more check, and then we'll wrap it up.
So while Ben's going through this, is there any other questions that everybody has?
Automation account was not found. Whatever. I copied and pasted this from somewhere else and did not try and get it to work. But yeah.
And just a show of hands to make sure that we're providing decent content. Could I get a show of hands of how many people found that session really useful? And or comments in the chat, obviously. That's awesome.
If there's any actual interest, hit me up on Twitter, and I'll write up a blog on getting that to work properly.
What's your Twitter?
At powers underscore hell dash hell
dash like
dash.
Come on, no underscore. You're
underscore.
Right.
Underscore.
Yeah, sick. Yeah. Powers underscore hell. Fantastic. So just hit me up if you can. It's not something I don't do a lot of work with automation accounts generally. But so the one key benefit, and I just want to stress this because this is something that most people sort of I take for granted. Azure functions are awesome. Azure Automation allows you to run that code on hosted machines in your environment. So you can run hosted runbook workers on on-prem servers. You can't really do that with function apps. So you sort of get the best of both worlds with Azure Automation. And if you do it as a hosted runbook worker, it's a lot faster because you don't have to wait for a host to spin up. So if you set up your runbooks to just go, every day at 7 a.m., I'm going to do a thing on this machine, it just does it at 7 a.m. And the best part about that is that all the code is sitting in that one account, not on some random server that people forget where that scheduled task is running. I think that's the huge benefit to Azure Automation.
Yeah, definitely. And for me, one of the cool things that you can do around this is sit there and say, I'm going to use, say, a Logic app or Azure, Power Automate. I had to think of the new name for it. Power Automate and go and call those runbooks and do on-prem changes. So for example, your new user onboarding, where you need to do something with your on-prem resources, create user objects in AD so it syncs to AAD. That's how you can start building those workflows through. Just as a concept or a thought bubble for people to think about where the on-prem solutions would work.
I would go one step further and say anything that you've got scheduled tasks running on any servers in your environment should be moved to Azure Automation. Full stop, the end. Why? Because then they're all in a central location.
And they've got source control.
Can't stress that one enough.
Cool. So is there any other questions, or are we happy to wrap up the session? I'll take Mark's clicking of keyboard as he's fine with this to wrap up the session.
He's trying to enhance.
Yeah.
Just having a side conversation with Richard. No, so all good.
Cool. All right. Well, I think that pretty much wraps it up. I'm going to stop the recording now. Thank you, Ben. Thank you for Richard for presenting this week, especially the short notice and getting everything working.
Awesome. Hey, if we can get some demos of WVD next month, I mean, I'm going to be here anyway, but that'd really make me want to be here. I need to see more WVD stuff, and if we can get some people that have got experience with it to just go through the basics of setting it up, just saying, it might be worthwhile.
Okay, we'll see what we can work out.